All right, I think I got it straight. Sorry. Let's see. Trying to remember what I did that I wanted to share with you. Oh yeah, the test for the last module should be available. Let's see, make sure of that. Y'all can hear me okay, can't you?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I had a hard time getting back into the meeting. I had it paused and I was just old man problems. I got it to work. So let's see. This is there it is. Yeah, it's available now. I went through it and I believe I got rid of all the questions, and it might have only been one. It may have been two, but not any more than that, where it wasn't clear what the answer should be. And if you were at the last class, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It was those whisper plots where we couldn't even tell on the left-hand side which one went lower than the other. They looked almost identical. And I went through the trouble of drawing lines, and all that did was show the opposite of what their answer was. So anyway, I went in with the intention of deleting those, and I believe I did. So that test is available. Not due till October 9th, but you of course can take it. I just pushed it back a week because I don't want you to feel that time pressure of just having a test hanging out. It bothers some of you more than others. So that's that. We're doing we're at a really good pace. So as far as that goes, everything's fine. We're not going to have to rush anything in. I think we'll have time even to do one or two of the movies at the end and discuss those, which I don't know. I like them, but I'm kind of a movie person.
Which movies are they?
They are, one of them is Moneyball, which that'll probably be the second one because I like the other one better. Moneyball is really, it's not that old because Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill are in it. You know, so it's not like one of those 80s movies or anything like that. It's about, and it's based on a true story about the management of the Oakland A's and how they brought somebody in and who applied statistics to putting a roster together and really transformed the way that's done in baseball, which I'm not a huge baseball fan, but if you follow this kind of things, it was transformative and it was all statistics. But the movie is not overtly about math, so that's what makes it good. So many math movies are just about math, and when years ago the only ones you could get was like the urban school and some teacher inspires students and that kind of stuff. So they're not those kind of movies. They're a movie where there's an underlying theme of math. But anyway, the first movie, that was probably way too much about that. The first movie I think we'll watch is called Unbreakable. And there'll be a link to it because there's multiple new movies named Unbreakable. And you guys have probably seen one or both of the sequels to that because they're pretty recent. They were Split and then Glass. And
that's what you were talking about. Yeah, that movie's good.
Yeah, it was a weird setup. On it, the Unbreakable came out, and then like 18 years later, the second one came out, and then a couple of years later, the third one came out.
So I think it was the one with Glass had Samuel L. Jackson in it, yeah. I think, but Unbreakable was the first one with him in it, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So that one's a really good movie.
It is because you kind of get the background on his character,
especially if you watched all three. Like it's really good.
It is good. And I think it was kind of an accidental sequel. I don't think they ever intended to do that, but they kind of linked them together. But the first one's really good. Samuel L. Jackson, but it's like from the year 2000. So I'm afraid to ask, but that's probably before some of you were even born. So I think that's more recent, but probably isn't. But like you said, you'll see familiar people in it. And it doesn't have any cheesy CGI or anything like that in it that's bothersome. And that has more subtle math themes, but they're interesting to talk about. And I think they're interesting to talk about and think about as how they apply to the things going on in the world nowadays, and how people are distributed and things like that. There's a lot of misuses of statistics out there. And one of the things I would like you to take from this class is being able to interpret those things more objectively. They may not always agree with what you believe in, and that's fine, but you should be able to be objective about what you're reading, instead of somebody telling us always what we're reading. So it's a neat movie. So hopefully we'll have a chance to watch that one. And then if we have more chance, we'll do Moneyball last. And Moneyball's not bad. It's not, but it's not as good. But anyway, we got 5 modules, like regular modules of material, and we're already on the 3rd one. So that's what makes me think that we'll be able to get to those other things. And you can see on here, the next module is elementary probability. I'll make that available now. The first homework assignment, you can see that's there. That's going to be available, but we're going to work through those together as well. So don't feel like you have to jump into that. Now you could go in and look at it if you wanted to before we go over it, but we will go over it together and discuss it together, because you guys participate so well in those discussions. It makes me feel good about what you're learning. And you see this video about the lie detector video, and that's an interesting application of statistics. And I'm not taking, every topic nowadays is sensitive, and I seem to offend people on both sides. People, I don't know, I don't think I'm that unique, but people don't know what to make of me. I just follow, I just like the facts and the truth. And the lie detector video talks about the errors in lie detector tests, and how many more of them there really are. So I'm not anti-police. I'm not. We're going to look at it. I'm not saying that. I'm not taking any side on the police, but we'll look at what the probabilities tell us about taking a lie detector. And then what I would tell you all is what I tell after we would talk about it is exactly what I've told my own kids. If the police ever ask you to take a lie detector, say no, thank you. It can only cause you trouble. It can only cause you trouble, because when you see the math behind it, you'll see how many false positives there really are. And a false positive, of course, is somebody who is telling the truth, but the test says they're lying. Now, of course, they're not admissible in court, but if you fail a lie detector test, I watch enough ID shows on Investigation Discovery. If you fail a lie detector test, your life's going to be miserable for a long time, because you move right up the chart of suspects or whatever it is. So anyway, we'll look at that. I think that's a good real world example, and another good reason why it's important to understand. They tell you things like if you didn't do anything wrong, you don't have anything to worry about. Well, you certainly do have something to worry about. So you have to be there to be your own advocate sometimes.
I feel like I would 100% fail that.
Yeah, well, that's the problem, Alexis. Even if you're innocent.
Yeah, I feel like I would get so nervous. It look like I'm lying.
Yeah, and all of us have different, I think, levels of what we think a lie is and what makes us nervous. I took a lie detector test, or whatever you want to call it, in an interview once, because it needed a certain level of security.
Mm-hmm.
And, the guy, it was made me very nervous. They faced me towards a mirror. He hooked all these wires up to me, and the guy stood behind me and asked these questions. And it was actually for the National Security Agency, NSA, which
Oh
is
my
kind of
word.
a little bit of a creepy place. And he asked this one question: had I been in touch with foreign nationals? Well, I was finishing up graduate school, and graduate
Yeah.
schools in math are full of foreign nationals.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said yes. And then he asked me about it, and I clarified it. He said, well, no, forget that. And then he asked the question again. Well, in my mind, it was still yes.
Yeah.
You know, he can't just tell me that the truth is different than it is. And
Yeah.
he really was drilling me on that question. And believe me, I'm nowhere near important enough to know anybody in any country that has any level of importance at all. I knew some guys, some of my friends in class, and they were from different, different countries. But anyway, they're an intimidating thing. And I
Yeah.
think like some of us would fail them at higher rates. And if you fail it, they're not going to be very nice to you. So
Yeah. I
anyway,
feel like I would
there's that.
overthink.
Yeah, there's, and like I said, and we're all different. So where
Yeah.
you overthink and I overthink, somebody else may be able to brush that to the side very easily. When he says, oh, don't worry about those, they think, okay, I'm not going to worry about those, and move on. But that's never been me. And
Yeah.
I don't know, some of that stuff, and this will be my last thing related to that. Because I am. If we were, I've been at Southside for 31 years, and they have security. Well, they say they're going to put in security cameras, uh, even though we really hadn't had any security issues in Southside. It's an extremely safe place to be. It's probably one of the safest places in the area. And but they got money, and they were going to put in security cameras. So everybody thinks great. They're making us more secure. They have them in the classrooms. There's one in my classroom there too. And the problem came up when later I found out, because it involved somebody I knew, that they had an employee who was underperforming at her job. And to fire a state employee can be kind of difficult. So you kind of try to build a case and gather up different instances where these things happen. And she was chronically late to work. Well, to prove that, they took one of the security cameras on the roof of the main building and pointed it to the parking lot where she normally parked. And then they would be able to get a timestamp of when she showed up for work every day. So my question for you is that security? Is that a security camera, or is that a surveillance camera? They sell it to you as security,
Yeah.
and then they use it for surveillance, and that's uncomfortable, because I kind of feel like that's not what we agreed to. And when I was decorating my classroom, I hung a big rocket up from the ceiling in the corner where this camera was. And by the end of the day, I had gotten an email that rocket was blocking the view of the camera. So they were obviously watching them pretty closely. Anyway, all that kind of stuff kind of creeps me out. I like freedom and liberty and stuff like that. And I think that's always been good for individuals. And so when that kind of stuff happens, it feels like really a big brother thing, and it makes me uncomfortable. But anyway,
Yeah.
Whatever. This is not a political science class, but we will talk. Some of the topics we'll talk about may feel like that, and I don't mean them to feel like that. I just know there's some interesting math there. So it's an interesting thing to talk about. So many math problems are just made up about riding a train. It's going this fast, this direction, silly stuff like that. So when we have some real world problems, they're fun to do. So let me turn my fan on a little bit. All right. We're going to start this elementary probability module. These videos, first 4 videos you see, of course, are just probably Khan Academy videos. So the Zoom videos will get posted there. I didn't post that last Zoom video yet, but I have downloaded it. Shouldn't take me long to get that done. And like I said, if you just showed up, I fixed the test. So still text me if you come across something on the test that looks weird or not clear, and let me know, because I can still make mistakes, and I'm not. You point out, I appreciate when you point out potential mistakes. I think Lexi on a test or something shared one with me, or somebody did, and I appreciate those things. I don't get offended by that at all. I like that and I appreciate that. So anyway, we're going to look at some basic probability, and most of the time a class like this, when I took it too, it's called statistics class, but you actually spend more time in probability than you do statistics. So here we go. In probability, and it's going to start with definitions first, just so we're all speaking the same language. So and in mathematics, the word elementary is not used to mean like elementary school. It's meant to mean the basic, an introductory course. So, the textbooks you see for this course are always called elementary statistics, and that doesn't mean easy or juvenile or elementary school. It just means your first course usually in statistics, and this is elementary probability, because we're going to start from the beginning. And like I said, this has a lot of value because it helps you think about things that we hear a lot anymore, I think, in a different way. And that's important to think, for you to be an independent thinker and having the appropriate knowledge to be a productive thinker, not just being contrary and always being the opposite of everybody else, but developing your opinions based on facts and research and things like that. And then you can support what you believe, other than just emotional screaming or whatever people do so much nowadays. Elementary probability. And we're going to start with a probability experiment. And that is basically a trial or experiment. I don't want to use the word use the word in its own definition, so I'll call it a trial that leads to well-defined results. So simply put, like flipping a coin, that's a probability experiment. You flip a coin, you get a heads or tail. So that's a trial that you could do that would lead to a well-defined result. And the result is called, in this context, a single result of a probability experiment is often referred to as an outcome. So if you were flipping a coin, how many possible outcomes are there?
2.
Yeah, exactly. A single result of a probability, I'll just say it's called, save you from having to watch me, a single result. It's called an outcome. So that's the important word there. Now, what we call the sample space. Sample space. That's the set of all possible outcomes for a probability experiment. So it changes based on the experiment. The set of all possible outcomes of a probability experiment. So probability So if you were, and in mathematics, set notation is usually when we're denoting a set, we use these little squiggly braces instead of the regular parentheses. So when you see those around a group of letters or symbols or whatever, or numbers, that usually denotes a set of something. What would the set of all possible or what would the sample space look like for flipping a coin? So somebody in your, and I know that sounds a lot like the last question I asked, and I think Ayana said 2, which was correct. But this is not asking how many outcomes. This is asking what are the outcomes?
X and Y, or like,
Heads or tails? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yes.
oh, I said X and Y. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, you're not completely wrong, because you could call them that if you wanted to. But traditionally we call them heads and tails. But you were correct in that there are 2.
You meant like the overall, like I didn't know you meant just for what, you know.
No, this feels very informal, and it kind of is. But when we talk about sample spaces, we want to know, what do the actual outcomes look like, and what are all the possible outcomes? If you were to roll a regular die, what would the sample space be?
Isn't it like 1 through 10?
We do need to discuss this, because in probability, there's a lot of examples that are related to dice and cards and things people gamble with. And not everybody is familiar with those. Plus, since the olden days, there's a lot of different dice now. And there certainly are 10-sided dice.
Oh wait, no,
What's
it's usually
the-
1 through 5, right?
No,
Or
not
is it?
yet.
One
See, some
through
people don't. Go ahead.
it's 1 through 7.
Try it one more. Somebody else guess.
1
You're hitting
1
all
through
around.
8?
No,
6.
1 through
there
6.
you go. 1 through 6. Thank you. This is the
Wow.
old-fashioned cube-shaped dice. Has numbers on it. Well, actually dots, but they're numbers 1 through 6. Now, in defense of the rest of you all, there are dice made nowadays that some games use that have all different numbers of, 20-sided die, all kinds of different ones. But when we refer to dice in this module, we're referring to the old-fashioned 6-sided die. And I know that probably board games are a lot less popular now than they once were. So your exposure to dice is probably very limited, and that's not your fault at all. But just know that when we refer to a die, a single die, that is the one that has 6 sides and they're numbered 1 through 6. And that brings me to cards, because a lot of people don't play cards anymore either, for all kinds of reasons. Does anybody out there play any card games at all? And what answer that by telling me what card game you play. If you
Sometimes I'll play like Uno with friends,
right?
but also wow, I can't remember what the other one's called. I play it actually a lot, but I can't remember what they're called because I'll have like game nights, but I can't remember.
Yeah, there's a
name
lot
of
of
one of them.
weird decks that go along with specific games like Uno.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know, Magic, even Pokemon is a card game. But the traditional, does anybody play in this area? I feel like I hear more kids talk about spades.
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody play spades out there?
I haven't played that in a while. I kind of forgot.
I've never played, but my grandma and like my aunts and uncles, they know how to play.
Right. People like me,
think
right?
I would know how to play.
I'm probably the same age as your grandfather. So
No.
we play games like spades or games that are very similar. I was raised on a game called Pinochle,
Oh.
which is a more northern game. My mom was from Pennsylvania, so she brought that with her, and we learned how to play it. And but I have met a few people down here that play Pinochle, but they're older than me. Older.
Have you ever played Sequence?
Never. I haven't even heard of that one.
Oh my gosh, it's so good.
What kind of deck does that use?
It's just a regular deck, but it has like a board to it with like the board is like covered in like a deck of cards.
Okay.
And like you have like a deck of cards with you and you try to like get 5 in a row with like these like tokens type things.
Okay.
So I play that with my family a lot.
Okay.
I play Rummy and Go Fish.
There you go. Those are the really high level card games.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
used to play War, which was very.
Yes,
Oh,
war.
and another example is
That was my favorite.
I shouldn't have ignored it. The other examples is poker, of course, like Texas Hold'em.
Yeah.
You probably have heard of that because that's kind of seen a resurgence in playing. But anyway, a typical your traditional deck, and I believe it's the deck used in spades, is often referred to as a poker deck, and it's the one that has 2 all the way up through ace. You familiar with
Yeah.
that? Okay. It's a poker deck, and that's used in Texas Hold'em, but that's also used in a lot of other card games. And there are 52 cards in that deck. Now you're not being tested on your gambling skills or your card skills, but they work well for these type of problems. And let me just show you.
I feel like I may have an idea of what we're gonna do because I took math 154 and that's like quantitative reasoning, and we did probability.
Yeah.
Where you have like 52 cards. It was the worst problems in the world. I could
Yes.
never figure it out. But
Those-
I
yeah.
Yeah, it
remember
killed my
that.
mood when you told me that's what we were doing today.
Well, right now we're talking about it. We'll get around to doing it, but
Oh, and the marbles,
it
please.
won't be so bad. It won't be so
Please
bad.
don't bring the marbles.
Quantitative reasoning was very fun.
Okay.
That was the absolute worst class I've ever taken in my entire life.
It wasn't the worst. It just was very time consuming.
But you think that this class will be like a lot harder to understand.
I know.
Yeah. Well, it can be for some people, and but I try not to push it. I feel like if I make it that difficult, you learn very little. And to me,
Yeah.
in the end, what matters is what you learn, not me.
Yeah.
Giving you bad grades doesn't make anybody learn anymore.
Yeah, I took it my senior year in high school, so this
Okay.
is better. Freshman year
Yeah.
is a lot better.
Well, good. Here is what a poker deck looks like laid out. So that may look more familiar. You have 4 suits of cards. So what is the first cards? What is that suit called? These right here.
Kings?
What's that?
Is it just kings?
No,
no?
I don't mean to be pointing to that single card.
Oh,
Pointing
diamond.
to this, yeah, diamonds, this row of cards. And we call those suits. So these are the diamonds. You say, well, duh, that's obvious. It has a diamond on them. A couple of shapes on here you probably don't recognize, or you recognize as something else. This next row, what do we call this?
Spade? Isn't that a spade?
No, that is one of them, but not this one. Well, they obviously look like a clover, but that's not what we call them.
Yeah.
We call these clubs.
Oh yeah. My bad.
I don't know where that came from. This is unfortunate that we use this so heavily in statistics, because it's a generational thing. It's not a knock against you all at all, but you guys play different games and do different things. But anyway, it's not difficult. You just need to see it. What's this third row called?
Hearts.
Hey, that one makes sense. Diamonds and hearts make sense.
Yeah.
So we like those. So those are the hearts.
Is the bottom one spades, or is that wrong?
The
too?
bottom one is spades. Yes, it is. And I guess that probably came from, they look like a shovel blade, which is called a spade. A pointing shovel is called a spade. So maybe that's what that is. Now, they often will group them by color as well, and talk about red cards and black cards. So looking at a picture of a deck of cards, it should be pretty obvious. The red cards are the diamonds and the hearts, and the black cards are the clubs and the spades. Now, how many cards total are in a deck? In this deck, in a poker deck?
Isn't it like usually 64?
Whoa.
No. That's a 3-2.
Is it 50?
Oh, and this one, in this specific deck?
Oh,
Yeah,
this one is not.
I thought
52.
Yes, it is. I heard somebody say 52.
Oh, I
There's
thought you
50
said it was wrong when I said 52. I was like, wait, what?
I'm sorry, I didn't. There was a couple people talking at the same time, and I couldn't tell. No, you're correct. There's 52 cards. They're divided into 4 suits or 2 colors. So if there's 52 cards total, how many is in each suit?
wouldn't it be 13?
Yes. So there's 13. These are good numbers to kind of remember, but you can always Google, like I did, a poker deck and look at an image of it and count them, so it's not something you necessarily have to commit to memory. So they're the red cards. So there's 13 of each suit. There's 13 diamonds, 13 clubs, 13 hearts, and 13 spades. How many black cards are there?
26.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. There's 26. There's 2 suits that are black cards, and there's 13 in each one of those. So there's 26. So that's yet another way they get divided. Now, we also divide them sometimes as what we call face cards. Does anybody know what the face cards are in a deck?
The kings,
Yes.
jack,
Yeah.
queen,
Go ahead. Kings, queens, and
jacks.
There you go. So when you look at the deck, it's a little easier to see because they're the cards that actually have faces on them. So these are the face cards over here. So sometimes they'll reference face cards. So you would want to know how many of those are in the deck and how many are in the deck, face cards.
Oh,
Yeah, there's 12 of them. There's 3 in each suit, 4 suits, so 12 cards. Now, the order that we sequence cards doesn't really, I don't think that comes up in any probability problem. So that's not anything to be concerned about, because you can see in this picture, they started with the ace. But in many games, probably most games, the ace is the highest card, rank wise. And the 2 is the lowest. It goes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, jack, queen, king, and then the ace. And in some games, the ace can be the lowest and the highest. So I don't know. It depends on the game. But that, I don't think the actual ranking of these cards matters in any of the problems that we do. So you won't have to worry about that. A pinochle deck, and don't write any of this stuff down because we're not going to use pinochle decks, but I'm an old guy who once played pinochle, so I feel like I should. And all right. Of course, being able to spell it would help. Pinochle. It'll probably correct my spelling. Hey, I think I might have got a P-O-C-H. Well, I'll figure it out. Pinochle deck. And the cards will look the same, but the distribution is very different. Here it is right here. Let's see if we can look at this picture. That doesn't show me what I want. When you pull a poker deck, you see exactly what you want to see. Pinochle deck, it's all adds to buy. Oh, here's a picture. What is this, eBay? Boy, I'm really getting old. You have to go to eBay to get a pinochle deck. You probably would have a hard time finding one down here. Up north, you might see them more often in stores. Anyway, those are the cards laid.
That's what you were talking about. My grandma had the.
Your grandma.
Thanks for your age or anything.
I think my parents have that.
Yeah, they may. And I think they're more likely if they spent some part of their life, or their parents did, up in Pennsylvania or further north, those kind of games.
Yeah, they're from Illinois.
Okay, yeah.
And
And
my
they maybe
grandparents
even
used to
played.
travel a lot. I think that's like where she got hers. I have not seen that deck of cards in so long.
And you probably, like I said, you probably won't around here. But what do
Right?
you notice about there's the same 4 suits, but what do you notice about the distribution in cards compared to the poker deck? Well, look at the hearts, because you can see all of them. What do you see? Look at the hearts there compared to the hearts in the poker deck. And what's the first thing that jumps out at you?
Is it the numbers?
Yeah, they
Like
don't
they
go
have-
down all the way, do they? They
Yeah.
stop at 9.
Yeah.
A poker deck goes down from, has 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, and 2 as well. And what's the other thing you notice?
Is it the amount of face cards it has?
Yeah, and actually the amount of each one it has. In a
Yeah.
poker deck, there's 1 of each card. There's 1 ace of hearts, 1 king of hearts. In a pinochle deck, there's 2. There's 2 ace of hearts. So it ends up being a 48 card deck. But you don't. So we're not doing any pinochle problems. Don't worry about it. Only me and Anna's grandmother play pinochle. So
Sorry.
it's okay. No, I'm perfectly fine. You live long enough. This is what you see. You
Hey,
know,
my parents too.
when I first started teaching, I was in my 20s, and it was very common to have students that were older than me, which is kind of a weird
Wow.
sensation. But now that almost never happens. And I'm usually as old as your parents now, and also getting close to grandparents. So, but anyway, that's the deck of cards that we're going to use, is that poker deck. When they make a reference to that, and the dice is going to be the 6-sided dice. And let's see, I need to change my share. Back to my whiteboard. The other thing that I have to point out, and I am not making a statement about anything, but it's just something we have to, I guess, agree. When we reference problems reference gender in this class, they are talking about, I guess I'm allowed to say, the traditional 2 genders. So I know there's all kinds of things about that now, but when we talk about it in this class, we're just doing it in its most simplest terms. And we do have problems when they talk about having, you have 3 children. How many different combinations of gender can you have? And so when we ask problems like that, it's not for any kind of reason other than just the math. It's referring to boy, girl, or female, male, or I guess what I could say is what was the traditional recognized 2 genders. So anyway, you get what I'm talking about, right? So,
Oh yeah.
all right. Okay. So anyway,
Can't keep up.
that's what we're gonna. Yeah, it's when you're old, it's even harder. So.
even being young, I can't keep up.
Mm-hmm. But we're just doing it in its most simplest terms. So, so when we have card problems, poker deck. When we have dice problems, 6-sided die. And when we have a problem that references gender or sex, if you prefer, it's boy, girl, or girl, boy, or female, male, girl, boy, I'll say. So.
What does the HT stand for again?
That was the sample space for flipping a coin. That was head.
Oh, okay.
I probably shouldn't abbreviate those, but I can be lazy. So we have heads and tails, girls and boys. And to show you where those things are used, for example, in children you might have. And so I'll show you with that. I have 3 kids. Let me get a couple more definitions, and then I'll show you a tree diagram, and you'll see how we can use that to figure out some of these. So anyway, an event back to definitions. An event is a specific set
Can everyone see his screen? Because mine is like black. I can't see.
I see it.
I can see it.
What? Maybe it's
my guess, Mallory, is your connection's a little slow.
Okay.
Because I hear oftentimes when you're talking to me, I hear your voice is a little distorted, and that's typically because it can be a little slow. So sorry about that. I'm hoping it'll load here in a second, but I don't really think there's anything I can do on my end about that. On your end, you could probably take other devices off of your Wi-Fi or something like that. How do you connect, Mallory, to the internet?
We have internet here, but I live in the middle of nowhere, so it's terrible. But
Yeah.
I try to use my phone data, and then I just leave my computer on our assignments so I can work that way.
Right.
But I can go back and watch the recording and get the definition, so it's fine.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that, Mallory. Up until recently, all I had was DSL, and I couldn't even Zoom, and it was awful because I live in the middle of nowhere as well. A lot of us
Yes.
do. So
It's so terrible.
it is. But when you finally get some kind of high speed, you'll be in heaven. You'll appreciate it so much more. So we finally got Starlink in our area, and very happy for that. It's been pretty good.
Where are all of you guys from? Are you guys all?
Go ahead, Mallory. Where are you from, Mallory? You don't mind?
So I actually live like kind of outside of Cambridge. I live on 130 though. So
Mallory, when you said in the middle of nowhere, I was gonna guess Lunenburg. Oh, you must live in Lunenburg County.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So sorry, yeah,
I
Lunenburg.
was thinking the other way. I was thinking she was like down in Lawrenceville, like in the country.
That's our,
down 58.
the college goes covers like 8 counties, all the way from Prince Edward over in Farmville to Greensville. And typically the counties that are the most rural, they're all rural, are Brunswick and Lunenburg, and then Cumberland as well. But the Cumberland students go to Keysville, so I don't have many of those. But if you guys don't mind, if you want to.
I'm from Farmville. Technically I'm a Keysville student.
Yeah, but Prince Edward counties is, because you have Longwood, is a little, has more amenities than Cumberland and Buckingham, just north of you.
Yeah.
It'd be pretty remote. Who's that?
I was gonna say, am I the only one from Farmville?
Yeah, I live in Lake Cross, so I'm not far from like South Hill and like East Coast and everything.
I don't know any of the places that y'all have talked about.
Oh,
Lake Cross. Lake Cross is
the Southside's campus, like in Alberta.
No, I've gone to Keysville.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you did. Yeah, because Keysville.
But
that exists sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm originally from Florida, so I don't know all the areas.
Yeah. You would probably have no reason to ever go to Lake Cross.
Yeah, never.
But if I'm from Mecklenburg County as well, with Ayana. I knew she was from Mecklenburg because she went to Parkview. That's where my wife met her. And my wife raves about Ayana. And my wife is not this teacher that raves about everybody at all. So when she goes on and on about how great a student is, I know that it really means something. So Ayana and I are from Mecklenburg County.
Wow, I've never heard of that place.
Yeah, South Hill. You may have heard of South Hill.
Yeah, have you been to South Hill for anything?
I don't think so. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, y'all do have everything you need over there.
So. My experience is people over there go to Lynchburg.
I go to Lynchburg, Richmond. Yeah. We always are out of town, and we travel a lot, but we don't really. Like if we go anywhere in Virginia, it's either Richmond or Lynchburg.
Yeah. I think the only reason you would go to South Hill is if you were driving to like Virginia Beach, you would go through South Hill. But other than that, I live in Palmer Springs, which Ayana is probably the only one who knows what that is.
I did not know you're in the country for real.
Yeah, I am.
Down there.
Palmer Springs sounds bougie. That doesn't sound country.
Not at all.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So country.
Oh my gosh.
And it's really close.
The fun happens though.
It is a lot of fun. And it's really close to the north. I could almost throw a rock into North Carolina from here.
Yep. Really?
So we go to where you might go to Lynchburg, we go to like Raleigh or Durham and places like that. Those are the closest urban centers.
Oh wow, that's so crazy.
Yeah. And then Lake Cross, you probably go up to Richmond or Colonial Heights for a mall, or Richmond for
because I only live like 5 minutes from Bracy. I used to live in Bracy, like on Nellie Jones.
Yes.
Which is like, you know how you pass, I'm sure you take 85 home sometimes. Like you cross, well, I mean, she wouldn't know, but you cross the North Carolina state line and come right back into Virginia when you take off the exit. It's really weird.
That's what I do every day.
Yeah.
If I take 85 home, I actually cross into North Carolina. And then when I get off on the exit, I come back into Virginia.
I did not realize that I didn't realize that we all lived so far away. I guess not
Yeah.
so far.
The Zoom, well, it is the Zoom stuff really breaks down those
Yeah.
geography. You know, before we would get students on a single campus, like Mallory in Lunenburg, she's kind of in the middle, so she could kind of go to either campus if she was driving, and it would probably be about the same.
The only place I've heard of is Lunenburg.
Yeah.
No, but I go to Clarksville a lot for Bugs Island.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I
Well,
think
that's Mecklenburg
right.
County.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just didn't know that. Yeah,
That
my
is.
family and I, we go to the lake a lot, so
Okay.
that's what we do. I could run into y'all at the lake.
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely. So, does anybody else want to share where they're from?
Does anybody know where South Boston is?
Yes, I do, Jalen. Halifax County.
Yes, sir.
South Boston's a neat, of course, when you live there your whole life, you probably don't think so, but that's a neat little town.
It really is. I really like it.
Have y'all been to
driven to South
Farmville?
Boston just to go to South Boston. Was that?
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Sometimes we all talk at the same time, and I don't mean to. Have y'all been to Farmville? I feel like y'all would.
I've never been to Farmville.
You need to come visit me.
Farmville.
My family and I, we moved here, and my dad became the pastor at New Life Church. And I don't know if you guys have heard of New Life Church.
No.
Oh.
In this area, there's a church every half a mile, so it's hard for me to keep up with
Yes.
all.
I've
Yeah.
heard of New Life Church, like 5 of them. So
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a lot of churches probably use that name. But
yes.
the only thing I really in Farmville that we've ever really is visiting Longwood or
Yeah.
students at Longwood. And then my wife used to like to go to Greenfront Furniture. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
free, so.
My mom does a college ministry at Longwood, and I also do that. I would go to Longwood, but they don't have what I want. So that's why I'm getting my associates first.
All right, good job. And then who said there was a Jalen that's from South Boston?
Yeah.
Now you probably have pretty good service. You have pretty good service down there?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. South Boston has done a really good job of not having the problems of small towns. You're getting funding for things. Y'all fixed up that old tobacco warehouse into a beautiful facility that the college offers classes in. You have the Prizery, which is a beautiful place for plays and things like that. And it's just a neat town. And the restaurants, they have some neat little restaurants there. It's a nice, and there's if you like car racing, there's a South Boston Speedway. I probably went there 30 years ago, but it exists for people who like those things. So
We're
yeah,
really
it's a very-
evolving. They just built a Starbucks here, and it's so crazy.
Yeah. It's and you have a lot of services there. You have a hospital, all those kind of things. It's nice.
Oh, they have a Starbucks in South Boston too.
They just built it, but they can't find anybody to work at it, so it's kind of just sitting there right now.
Yeah.
They literally just finished the Starbucks in South Hill like last week, like fully
Right.
open.
Staffing, unfortunately, is a problem everywhere. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I
that's
want to go
gonna
to all
work
these
its way out.
places.
yeah, they're actually, if you want to plan a little day trip, some of these little towns are nice to visit.
Yeah.
I'd say downtown South Boston is prettier than downtown South Hill.
Yeah.
And they have a nice farmers market there. Yeah, downtown South Hill is not much to look at really, which is unfortunate. But we do have a lot of stuff here, But it's just not all that great to look at. The Colonial Theater is pretty.
Is
I'm
it
not
a
really a
different
theater
part?
guy, but so.
Y'all need to come to Press Club in Farmville. It's so good. I don't know if y'all have heard of
Is
it.
that a restaurant? No.
Yeah. Have y'all heard of Fish and Pig?
Yeah, that's up near Hampton,
I've
Sydney. isn't
been
it?
there.
Yeah.
That place is good. I do
They-
like.
Well, they have a new location now.
Yeah,
I
they
think.
have a new location. But Fish and Pig and Press Club are owned by the same guy, and it's like the most popular restaurant in Farmville. Like people from everywhere come because it's so
Okay.
good.
I'd have to try that.
Y'all will
on a day
have
trip.
to.
Specific. Now, I am rambling. I'm enjoying rambling. Don't get me wrong. But let me try to at least finish some of these definitions. All right. A specific set of outcomes is an event. For example, when you're talking about rolling a die, you have 6 numbers, but you could say the event is rolling an odd number. What would that set look like? What would the outcomes in that event be? When I say
it would be like 1, 3, 5, 7.
Yeah. So just
well, if there was a 7, but there's not.
Oh,
You're rolling a
my gosh,
die,
yeah.
right? So
Sorry, yeah.
if you said rolling an odd number on a die, it would be the 1, 3, and the 5. So an event is a group of outcomes. It's not all the outcomes. All the outcomes is the sample space, but a specific group of outcomes or a specific set of outcomes is called an event.
Does it usually ask us to like just like always list them, or is it just like the amount of how many there are? So like if you did it out of the 6, it'd just be 3 numbers.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ayana. In most cases, the important thing is how many there are.
Okay.
Instead of what they look like. You know, so most of the times, all we care about is how many. So like you said, when you said there's 3 of them. So when you said 3 in that context, that meant there's 3 different ones, not the side of the die that has 3 on it. And that gets some students mixed up. So yeah, in most cases, when we're talking about probability, we're more concerned with how many. And like if we said, you know, another event would be drawing a red card. And you really wouldn't care what any of those red cards look like, whether they're hearts or diamonds or kings or 2s or whatever. You would be concerned about how many red cards there are. So, but anyway, that was a good point to make. So the way we define, now let's define, I'm going to clear my screen, and the different types of probability. There's 3. Most of the time they list them in 3 different groups. One of which not used very much, or we won't use it very much. But the first one is classical probability. And classical probability. And I'm going to write it using the notation you most commonly see. They usually write it in that function notation like this: P of E, the probability of event E. And this is the numerator. It's going to be a fraction. This is how we would calculate it. And I know you guys know how to calculate, a lot of you, basic probability already, but I'm going to write it down anyway. Number of outcomes in event E. So if it's flipping a coin, the number of well, if it's rolling a die and the event is rolling an odd number, then the number of outcomes in that event rolling an odd number is 3. And we looked at that, there's 3 odd numbers, so that would be the number of outcomes. And then the denominator number of outcomes in the sample space. And first, so we would write that example like this: the probability of rolling a die one time and getting an odd number. I'm just going to abbreviate here. Probability of an odd number. And what was the number of outcomes in the event rolling an odd number?
For the die,
Yeah.
135.
So 3 of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the number of outcomes in the sample space when you roll a die.
6.
There you go. Very good. So the probability of rolling a die and getting an odd number is 3/6, which is the same, of course, as you can reduce that to 1/2.
I was about to ask you, so like, do we always reduce?
Yeah, I think in general you do. It's a good habit to be in, but with multiple choice tests like we have, you really just end up doing whatever the answers do. Like
I'm so
sometimes
used
they'll
to
write
doing
they'll
it.
write decimals.
I'm
Yeah,
so used
sometimes.
to doing it like on have you I mean obviously you don't use it. I don't know if you do for your other classes on Hawks, like on Hawks Learning.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was the worst. Like
Yes.
yes,
I
she knows.
I have used that stuff several years ago, but I really have worked to try to make my classes cost-free to the students where you didn't have to buy books or access codes. So
They made me get a book.
for this,
Yeah, and I obviously haven't used it.
yeah.
But I didn't
Well, I'm
pay
sorry
for
they
it.
did that because
I know.
it's not required in my class. If you went into the Keysville bookstore, they probably looked at whatever Keysville class and they sold you that.
Yeah, I think that's what they did. That was
You
why.
probably could
Like,
return it and say it was not, that it was not required because that's their mistake. That's not your mistake.
Oh, yeah, maybe they could refund me.
Yeah, I think that they would because that's their mistake. You know,
Yeah,
you
because I
didn't buy
haven't
it
used
and you
it.
could- Yeah, well, more importantly, whether you used it or not, more importantly, it was not required. And,
Yeah.
and they told you it
they
was.
give you the book or
Yeah.
the access code, like a
A
little like
book.
to access
It's
a
a
book.
literal brick of a book. It's so heavy.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that's
not.
weird. Because I know with the access codes, they're weird about it. Like even if you don't necessarily need it, they still won't like give you your money back for it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, it wasn't an access code. But I had that last year.
Yeah. Probably the biggest reason I got away from books and access codes is I got sick of dealing with the bookstore.
Yeah.
I don't like dealing with the bookstore.
Yeah.
Because I hear those same stories every semester. And
Yeah.
I don't like that. So
Yeah, sometimes I feel like they give you stuff that you don't actually need.
it feels like that, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I don't want to
because
just outright accuse them, but when the same things keep happening, it certainly feels like that.
yeah.
Right. The second kind of probability is called empirical probability.
I feel like this is all a lot of these terms were in quantitative reasoning, right?
Yeah, probably. Quantitative reasoning has some one or more sections of
Yeah, I think I
statistics are
remember.
probably in it. So that's just good for you. This is I never will remember how to spell this name. Is it ICAL? I always want to put an A in there. Empirical probability. And these are the two. We may not talk about it this class, but maybe we will. These are ones that are kind of gleaned from data. Classical probability, the big assumption with classical probability is that all of the outcomes are equally likely. And in many cases, they are. If you flip a coin, the likelihood of getting a head and a tail is the same. But if I ask you if it's going to rain or not rain, you could use classical probability and say, well, the chances of rain every day is 50%, 1/2, because it's either going to rain or it's not going to rain. So, but we know that would be a inaccurate representation. of the probability of rain, because the likelihood of rain and not rain, they're not equally likely events. So normally we calculate probability, empirical probability from data we've collected. And I imagine that's how they do forecasts and things like that. They have data they've collected, and they know when circumstances are a certain way, then there's more outcomes that would include rain than not rain. So this is the probability of an event here. It is the same definition. Let me look at the way they wrote it just to make sure. It's based on observations or experiments. That's what empirical means anyway. So when we say number of outcomes, we're going to call it the frequency, as if we gathered all that data up and put it in a frequency distribution. The frequency and we'll do types of these so you know the difference. And then we'll talk about how this applies to a lot of things you hear in the news nowadays. Frequency of E over total frequency. So imagine you have a frequency distribution. Like we did in the first module. You can, for a certain outcome in that distribution, you would have, or a certain class, you would have a frequency for that class, and you could put that over the total frequency. And so let me just show you a quick example of that. And I'm borrowing a little of your time right now, sorry. You know, suppose you gathered some data, some simple data, and you have these class limits. This class goes from 1 to 2, and this one goes from 3 to 4, and this one goes from 5 to 6. This one goes from 7 to 8, whatever kind of data this is. And then you had gathered up, you organized your data, and you found these are the limits here. And this is the frequency. And you have, say, 3 of these, and 5 of these, and 12 of these, and 10 of these. And suppose I asked you, what's the probability that you would get, these are scores. I give you a quiz, it's out of 8 questions. And these are the grade distributions for all my classes. This is where people fell. What would you say is my probability of getting a 5 or a 6, a 5 to 6? What is the frequency of that class of the event? Very good. What is the total frequency?
You'd add all those up, right?
Yep.
So
30.
is it 30? Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. 12 over 30, and we could reduce that to that 136 go into both of those, 2 over 5, 2/5. If we interpreted that as a classical probability problem, there are how many different outcomes? There are 4 classes, right? You're going to fall in one of those outcomes, 1 to 2, 3 to 4, 5 to 6, or 7 to 8. There's 4 outcomes, 4 possible outcomes. One of those outcomes is 5 to 6. So looking at it for classical probability, the probability would be 1 over 4. One of the classes has 5 to 6, 4 total classes. But you can see why that would not be an accurate way to calculate probability. This is not a classical probability problem because not all of the outcomes are equally likely. You can look at the frequency and see which one's most likely. Of those 4 classes, which one happened the most times?
5 to 6.
5 to 6.
Yeah. And which one happened the least times?
1 to 2.
Yeah. So they're quite different. 5 to 6 is times more likely than 1 to 2. So why in the world would we assume they're equally likely? So classical probability, that's what I meant when I said classical probability applies when things are equally likely. Empirical probability applies when we have some data that tells us what's really happening. Oh, they're not all equally likely. I'm much more likely to get 5 to 6 than I am a 1 to 2. So that's a huge distinction. And next class, we'll talk about some of the places where people, I don't think it's out of ignorance as much as it's out of trying to manipulate us and move their points forward. They'll use classical probability for problems that are not classical probability problems. And the third one, I'm not even going to define it. Well, I can, but it's just defined with words and we don't really use it. I want you to have heard it before. It's called subjective probability. And all that is an educated guess. I might say, I'm having a party and hey, Anna, do you think you can come to my party? And she said, I think there's about a 30% chance I'll come to your party. So that is a subjective probability she's making, which really means there's no chance in hell she's coming. She's trying to be nice. But anyway, that's an educated guess. So guessing there's not much work to be done with that. We can all guess at stuff. So, but it's supposedly an educated guess. Yeah, but we get that from doctors and sometimes too. Sometimes it's better than not knowing anything at all. What's my chances of this surgery being successful? Well, of course, they could use empirical probability. But anyway, that's subjective probability, mostly just a definition. Will work mainly in classical and empirical. So starting next class, we will discuss real world examples of empirical and classical and see where that's used correctly and sometimes used incorrectly. But sorry I talked so long today, but I do really enjoy this class and I appreciate everybody coming and have a good rest of your week.
Thank you.
You can look at, you have plenty of time to take the test, but don't wait too long because we tend to forget things the further away they get. So just get to that test, but it's not even due till the next Sunday before too long. So you don't fall behind. And I will see you all next Monday.
See you Monday.
Bye. Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you all so much. Have a good afternoon.
Bye.
Bye.